So Elizabeth is asked to speak with John Proctor. She promises nothing. And there's a sound, the sibilance of dragging feet on stone. They turn, a pause. Herrick enters with John Proctor. His wrists are chained. He is another man, bearded, filthy, his eyes misty as though webs had overgrown them. He halts inside the doorway, his eye caught by the sight of Elizabeth. The emotion flowing between them prevents anyone from speaking for an instant. Now Hale, visibly affected, goes to Danforth and speaks quietly. This is a very real and raw moment for John Proctor. As he faces the woman he had let down, she knows that she has lied for him, and yet she thought it was a natural lie to tell. And this is the first time that they have been together, knowing their full commitment to each other. The note, a lot has been made of this idea of his feet coming across the stone, dragging across the theocracy that has been the weight behind this crazy moment and the hysteria that has run the town. Hale asks for them to leave, and Danforth presses past Hale impatiently. He's got no time for Hale now, who is not going to provide weight for his justice and the theocracy he's trying to preserve. And it's an inherently flawed theocracy, because it is trying to apply laws of invisibility to practical real lives. And so what we'll notice in this act is lots of references to reality, the practical sound of feet on stone, the chained wrists, these literal, the literal impact of the suffering that has been going on, not the birds flying, the pecked out eyes, the incubi and succubi, the things that we can't see. Hale says, "Excellency, let." Danforth again brushes past Hale and walks out, and Hale follows. Cheever stands and follows. Paris is interestingly left behind. And as a minister who would minister to his parishioners and offer the Eucharist, the body and blood of Christ in church, he gives him cider, very practical nourishment for a man who's been suffering, but he cannot offer him any sort of comfort from Christ, because he knows that he has been part of this vengeance that has been walking in Salem. Proctor returns it with an icy stare, and they're standing alone, and it is as though the whole world is spinning around them. And there's this beautiful moment where he touches her, the physical reality of a person. Okay, no principle, no matter how great, will justify the taking of it, Hale tells us. The focus on life continues through the symbol of the child that is growing. Real life. It grows. There is no word of the boys, and Elizabeth tells them that the boys are flourishing in the care of Rebecca Samuel. Proctor's love for Elizabeth is very clear. He says that she's a marvel, a great woman. Proctor tells her that they have not confessed, but that others have confessed. And this is kind of interesting for Proctor at the moment, because he's trying to decide what to do. Will he live? It profit nothing. He's not as good as the other people who might be refusing to confess. And he wants to measure himself against the sorts of people who have. Is he someone who is flawed and prepared to give way to God's judgment later on and lie? And there is a list of people, there be many, who have confessed because they have preferred to face God's judgment later on and perhaps pay for it then. Proctor asks about Rebecca, noted for her goodness all throughout the play. Okay? God forbid that one like her should be charged. Not Rebecca. She is 1 foot in heaven now. Naught may hurt her. And Giles. And this is the revelation of Giles, but Giles' death is quite interesting. It's different to Proctor's, and it's certainly different to Rebecca's because he's not hanged. But it's what he does that's fascinating. Proctor says, "I've heard nothing where I am kept. Giles is dead," and he looks at her incredulously. "When were he hanged?" And Elizabeth is quiet here. She says factually he were not hanged. He would not answer aye or nay to his indictment, for if he denied the charge they'd hang him surely, and auction out his property. So he stand mute and die a Christian under the law, and so his sons will have his farm. It is the law, for he could not be condemned a wizard without he answer the indictment aye or nay. Now his choice to stand mute is really an interesting one, because in it he defies the weight of authority. He actually refuses to make himself appear guilty. And because he says nothing, because there is no proof, ironically in a world where no visible proof has been needed, he dies a Christian, and therefore the law that has made him suffer and brought an end to his life will actually reward his sons. Interestingly, they press him. They press him with stones. And the stones have two meanings. The literal meaning of the stones forcing their weight down on his chest, but also the symbolic meaning, the weight of authority crushing him. It's interesting that his last words, and a lot of people write about this, that more weight signifies that he has liberated his conscience from the law of society. "Press upon me all your law. I have my conscience. I die with my integrity. I say nothing against you and nothing against myself, because my conscience and my integrity you cannot have." So it's a very important moment in the text, and for the theocracy in general. It were a fearsome man, Giles Corey. Okay, so then Proctor says, well, Elizabeth, with great force or will, but not looking at her, not being able to give over his integrity. "I have been thinking I would confess to them. Tell me what you would think." Her unwillingness to judge him is really important. She shows a recognition that in our world there is a belief system that she holds at her core, and that it is for God to judge John Proctor and not human beings. Unlike what the authority in Salem has been doing, judging everybody, she refuses to judge. She remains silent. She holds on to her own belief system. She has a conscience. She maintains her integrity by refusing to answer his question. "What would you have me do then?" And she says, "As you will. It is your conscience you must live by. You must judge yourself. It is not for the community, this theocracy and its application of God's will. It is not me, your wife, who should judge you. It is as you will. I will have it." She says, "Of course I want you living." Okay, that is what she would desire. But she would desire more greatly him remaining faithful to his own conscience. We find out more about who hasn't confessed, and he says, "It's all a pretense, Elizabeth." What is? Proctor says, "I cannot mount the gibbet like a saint. It is a fraud. I am not that man. Okay, I can't be a good man." He sees himself as inherently flawed, and he always has. Since he committed adultery, since he even confessed to Elizabeth, he still judged himself harshly. And he says, "My honesty is broke. I am no good man. Nothing is spoiled by giving them this lie that were not rotten long before." And Elizabeth is very careful and deliberate here. "But you've not confessed. there must be something lying deep within the hero that suggests that he believes there is something good that he can attain in himself. He jokes a little, "Spite only keeps me silent. It is hard to give a lie to dogs." For the first time, he turns directly to her. So this is where he's being direct with her. "I would have your forgiveness. Please tell me you forgive me." It's not for me to give you. I can't forgive you. I am not your judge. No matter what I say, you will continue to judge yourself. You must forgive yourself. He says, "It is a pretense for me, a vanity that will not blind God nor keep my children out of the wind. What say you?" She hears a heavy sob, and she says here, "It come to naught that I should forgive you, if you'll not forgive yourself." And here Miller is talking about a larger context beyond the law of a theocracy, is the law within oneself and one's own relationship with one's belief system, and that is important. He stands as though in physical pain, slowly rising to his feet with a great and mortal longing to find his answer. And his question is, can I find that level of goodness in me? "Better you should know me," Elizabeth says. "I have sins of my own to count. It need a cold wife to prompt lechery." She has had to forgive herself. She takes the burden away of his sin in some ways by taking her own responsibility for what has happened. He says, "I will not hear it, I know you." But she says, "You are taking my sins upon you. Look to your own sinning and not mine, because I will have to forgive myself." She goes on to explain how she had sinned. "I counted myself so plain, so poorly made, no honest love could come to me." And she says she exacerbated the problem through her suspicion that kissed him whenever she did. "It were a cold house I kept." And a lot of people attributed this word cold to this idea of stone. It was a weight. It was unforgiving. It was unbending. It didn't allow for humanity. "What say you, Proctor? The sun is soon up." And Elizabeth looks at him. "Do as you will, but let none be your judge. There is no higher judge under heaven than Proctor is." Now here she is talking about conscience. No one can judge you. You must judge yourself. Your relationship is with yourself and your God. It is not with the intermediary, the authority that is now so corrupted in Salem. "I want my life. I will have my life." Now, interesting where we started, where Hale says it's God's most precious gift. But here Proctor is choosing to hold fast to this idea of life, but not because it is a precious gift, but because he cannot see himself as being innocent like the likes of Rebecca. Hawthorne, with a mystical tone, "God be praised, it is providence." So here, the misapplied theocracy, the understanding of law, thinking that John Proctor and his choice is providence, is showing us that those in charge, those applying the law, are not applying it because they want necessarily to preserve a man's relationship with God, but because it is a providence that he will be a part of this incredible theatrical performance in bringing about the end of people's lives. He says in great pain as he turns his back to her, "It is evil, is it not? It is evil." And when he says it is evil, is he referring to the court system and the desire for his confession? Is it